Okay, hello everyone, good evening, and welcome to day 4 of our developer class, Introduction to Programming, JavaScript. In the past days, we've looked at some basics of JavaScript and programming in general, right? So today, I want to talk about functions, comparisons, conditionals, and loops. We started with functions yesterday, so again, we're just going to go back and look at functions and maybe play around with more examples, right? So I'll go back to functions, play with functions before I move to maybe comparisons, conditionals, and loops. Okay, so let's just start. Let me look for the functions lesson. Yes, function. Please, if you're not speaking, kindly mute yourself. Okay, so yeah, we talked about function yesterday, right? So a JavaScript function is a block of code designed to perform a particular task, right? I wrote a very short snippet here, right? Reusable blocks of code. If I go to my code editor, okay, so just give me a moment, maybe let me share my code editor. Just sorry. I guess you guys can see my code editor now, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So I'm just going to zoom in. So right. So a function is a block of code designed to perform a particular task, right? So a JavaScript function is executed when something invokes it. So there are like two steps to a function, right? You declare it, you declare the function just like how we kind of declare variables, right? Then for the function to perform an action, you have to do what we call invocation. But let's go over how to kind of declare a function and the format for declaring a function, right? So yesterday, let me just clear all this. Right? So like we've seen previously, right? Every action, every statement in JavaScript has its keyword and has its syntax, right? Oh, sorry, not syntax. Every statement has its keyword, right? So when we are working with variables, the keywords for variables are let, const, and var, and this is how you declare a variable, right? Let cohort maybe equals 3, right? So this is the keyword identifier or variable name, assignment operator, then value. Okay, so same goes with function, right? Function has its own way of its own syntax, right? So if I want to declare a function, I use the function keywords, right? I use the function keywords. If I just maybe quickly go back to where we have, I think I showed us this the first day, where we have keywords, right? You're going to see JavaScript keywords. So these first three are for variables, right? So JavaScript statements often start with a keyword to identify the JavaScript action to be performed. So there are more reserved keywords like that you can't use in JavaScript, but these are basically all the keywords you're going to mainly use. So you can see our function is here. It declares a function. We have var let const. We're going to use if, I don't know if we'll touch switch today. We're going to use if for and other stuff, right? So this is the keyword to declare a function. This is the keyword followed by the function name, right? I'm just going to name it my function because it's my function. Then you put a curly braces, right? You use a curly braces, then open parentheses. Sorry, we use a parenthesis, right? Then open and closing curly braces. So I said earlier, right? I think on the second day that in JavaScript, whenever I hear a block of code or a block, this is what is meant by a block. And I used some examples with variables, right? I declared some variables in here. We're going to be using blocks, like maybe in comparison and other things. So the syntax for function is the keyword, the function name, opening and closing parentheses, and a block, right? So where the magic happens is when the function is invoked, it runs every piece of code in here. Okay, so this is just a basic syntax for like kind of declaring a function, and you can write virtually any action you want to perform over and over and over again. So imagine you have a software that, let's say, I think I gave one example of a calculator yesterday, but let me give another case scenario, right? So maybe your software just all right. We don't want to force mute everyone, so let's just please try to keep ourselves muted. Okay, so what was I saying? Yeah, so I'm going to use a different case scenario, right? So, but let me just go back to what I did yesterday. For example, you want to kind of create a calculator. Maybe you're building a calculator, and you want to imagine adding, let's say, okay, typically, right, a calculator you have, you can maybe add two numbers, right? Imagine creating a variable, let's answer, because maybe I don't even think you can do that, right? Because the user is going to put inputs every time. Let answer equals 2 plus 2. Every time the user tries to calculate 2 plus 2, you might have 100 lines of this type of codes, and your variables are going to clash. So a typical example or use case of a function is to kind of create reusable pieces of code. I can do let answer. Okay, let me not use the return statement explicitly directly here. Let answer equals to, so we talked about arguments, right? Param1, or let me use number so it to be more descriptive, number 1 and number 2, right? So I can say let answer equals number 1 plus number 2. Then I can just do return answer. So if you can see, I just placed a very short action, a very short piece of code in here, right, in this block, and is enclosed in a function. If I don't invoke this, it's not going to do anything. But the sweet thing about this is I can use this hundreds of times by changing these two values, right? So if I try to do it as an example, I can say let x equals sum, help me sum 100 and 200. Again, I think I've not opened my, if I go live, we're going to see that our response is 300, right? So basically, function just gives you the ability to write a block of code that performs a particular task, and you can always reuse it, right? So let me just go through this document they have here. So a JavaScript function is defined with the function keyword, right? Followed by the name, followed by parentheses. So exactly what we just described, right? You have to use the function keyword, the name, and the name can be anything. The name can be anything, but it cannot start with a number. The same way we talked about with variables, and it cannot be a keyword, right? You cannot do, okay, I think you can do a keyword. Let me see. Let me see if keywords apply. Oh, it worked. Yeah, so I think the only rule with function names is it cannot be a number. This is funny. Yeah, okay. It cannot be a keyword, sorry. It's a reserved word. Let's see. We learn every day. Switch. Okay, so you cannot use keywords, right? But I don't know why let's work. We cannot use keywords, but just know the name can be dynamic depending on what you want to build, right? So I'm going to try to give more examples according to our document. So function names can contain letters, digits, underscores, same as variables, right? So if you know how to declare variable names, it's still the same thing that applies to function names. Then the parentheses may include parameter names separated by comma, right? So if you look at what we did here now, right? When we declared the function, we passed in like, these are like placeholders, right? I just named it number because I'm trying to maybe create a fictional calculator, right? I can name it payload, I can name it user, I can name it data, anything, right? So, and maybe I shouldn't go more deep into how to use and manipulate arguments. You can create as many arguments as possible, then use it in your function when you want to call them. Okay. Then function parameters are listed inside the parentheses in the function definition. Already looked at that. function arguments are the values received by the function when it's being invoked, right? So let me just explain what this means before I go forward, right? So for this function to work, you need to do what we call function invocation. And I explained yesterday that to invoke a function, so if I just done let x equals sum, and I didn't put in these two parentheses, I just did sum, right? It's going to just pour out the function, like the function declaration on our web page, or it's just going to output this to you, right? So for you to like kind of activate this block of code, for you to tell JavaScript to, hey, run this code and give me the result, right? Because we issued a statement here, return the answer. For you to actually do that with any function, you have to call the function, like it's called invocation, right? So this is function declaration, and this is, let me just put this back, and this is a function invocation, right? So you just have to remember the syntax. This is declaration and invocation. So if you declare your function with what's it called, parameters or arguments, when you're invoking it, you have to kind of pass in values, right? So if I try to do this now, if I try to save this invocation without passing these two, maybe one or two of these parameters, it's going to return maybe undefined or none. Okay, this is a data type. We're going to get to this. But typically, when you declare a function like this, you should pass in maybe values you want to play around with. Okay, I can pass in 12 and 32, and it's going to give me 44. So here now, I can use the same function over and over again. Okay, I think let me just change. Yeah, so let me just show this first. I can do let y. I can sum two other numbers, right? Let y equals 120 plus 302. And if I display y now, you're going to see I will have added two different numbers, but with the same function, right? So the sweet thing about function is you can write one code and reuse it with different arguments. Let me just give a different example, because this is just like a calculator-ish something. So let me see if they have, more real life example, right? So, okay, no, let me just bring something up the top of my head. So let's say you have a software that just, let me not play with dates. Okay, I did something with username yesterday, right? So I can pass in, I always want to return the full name of a user rather than the first name or the last name, right? So I can say, okay, let me do something like that is kind of similar to what we have in our project, right? So there's a field we want to concatenate the program. When you do program, then okay, that'll be too common. Let me just use user, right? Let me just do first name and last name. I'm trying to give a different example than the calculator app, right? So I have a user object, right? Like we had yesterday. So if we were here yesterday, we declared an object. We said object where are types of variables that gives us ability to declare key value pairs, right? So I'll say first name, Sammy. Last name is my last name. Spell that. Okay, so I can name this get full name, right? So we are declaring a function that kind of concatenates or joins a user's first name and last name and returns the full name, right? So maybe in our application, you can use this over and over and over again without having to do write the same code multiple times, right? So if I do, I can do, let me see, let results. So I don't want to use explicit, like just return the result, right? So let result equals to first name, remember, space. This is how you concatenate strings, then last name. So I don't know if we talked about this. If I just done first name plus last name, it's just going to join these two strings without a space. So let me leave that first so we'll see. Then I'm just going to return results. Now, if I display get full name, okay, let me say let full name equals to get full name user dot first name. I'm going to explain what we did here, and user dot last name. Okay, so what we're doing here now, right? We are kind of explaining functions, and I wanted to change the example, the calculator example we use, right? So this function, it's called a get full name, right? So what it just does, it takes the first name of a user and the last name and joins both of them and returns just one string. Okay, so we are calling the function here and passing 2 parameters, right? So I could have as well did get full name Sammy and my last name, right? I need to still work, but I'm using an instance like we are working in a real application, right? You won't have direct string values. You're going to be using variables and objects. So if we see this, if I save this now and output full name, I'm going to see it outputs my full name concatenated, but let me just add back my space here. Now it displays it properly right now. So with this we've written, right? So I'm just trying to explain that you can write little, you can have different functions that do different things in your code, right? I can have a function that formats date, right? I know I have this on a whole lot in most of my projects, right? So I format date to maybe every local time, right? Then you can also have a function that maybe gets something from a server and all and all and all. So if you've worked with Salesforce formula, you're going to see different functions. You can just check it out after this class, right? You see len. I know there's len. Let me try to remember some. I know there's len or length. I know there's text. There's if. There's today. So maybe you can just go to your Salesforce formula field and you're going to see, switch to advanced formula, you're going to see all these functions. This is how they declare it behind the hood, right? It's just a function and it just helps you, or they just open up the invocation part of it to you. Okay, so yeah, let me just kind of go through functions, then maybe I'll take the questions of the people that are raising their hand, right? So function return, okay? So let me see. Okay, I've talked about invocation. So when JavaScript reaches a return statement, the function will stop executing, right? If the function was invoked from a statement, JavaScript will return to execute the code after the invoking statement. I'll explain this. Functions often compute a return value. The return value is returned back to the caller, right? So I don't think like I explained this return statement, right? So just imagine if we wrote this function and I just did let result equals first name and last name, and I didn't do this. Okay, so ideally, what will happen is it's going to compute, like concatenate or join these two figures, right? But it's not going to return everything. It's just going to return undefined. So if you invoke this function, you're going to get okay. Let's even try it. If I go to my browser, you're going to get undefined because we're not sending anything back, right? So function does maybe computations or some things, then returns a value. So you always need to have it. The function has to return a value, right? But sometimes you might have function that doesn't return a value, that just manipulates data. You can maybe return an empty string or just return null, right? But you should always return a value from functions, okay? So that's just what return statements does. So if you have a function and your function performs an action, you should return a value. If you don't want to return a value, you just return maybe null or an empty string. But if you're going to call the function and expect a result, you should return a value. Okay, so this is just the syntax for return. And we're going to see, we can use return in anywhere in our code, but we're going to see how that works, right? Okay, so that's just about return. Then you can rewrite functions, right? So I've talked about this over. You can reuse code, define the code once and use it many times. You can use the same code many times with different arguments to produce different results, right? So this is the most powerful or the most sweetest things about functions, right? So you can use the same code many times with different arguments to produce different results. I can put in, okay, let me change my user object to, do I know anybody's full name here? Let me try to use a practical example, right? Yeah, so I can change it to someone else. Because let me just use a typical placeholder we all know. Let me just change it to John Doe. And the same function that just concatenates a full name will help me concatenate concatenate the same user object to John Doe, right? So we can do a whole lot of fun things with functions, but these are just kind of like basics to understand what functions are and what they do, right? We've talked about the invocation. Okay, I've already done this. Yeah, so this is just basic function. Like this is, if you understand this, you'll be able to kind of use and understand functions, right? There's a more deeper, more what's it called? There are more to functions, right? So if you can see they separated it, it's because functions like are huge, right? But I won't want to go into that now as usual. I just want to kind of just teach the basics, then maybe you can practice. Then when we move forward, we'll just use other methods on functions. Okay, I think I have many people that wants to ask a question. So let's just take our questions. Okay, so I'm just going to call Otman.
Hi, Sammy. So if you declare a function and you have like 5 parameters, like argument, and you want to invoke that function, the variable, like, does it have to be like the exact number of the parameters you declare in the function?
Okay, so I think that's a good question, right? So you're asking if you declared 5 parameters, right? Let me do age, cohort, and program, something like this, right?
Yes.
Okay, so this is actually a very good question, right? You're asking if it has to be what, the 5 parameters, right?
Yes. If you declare 5 parameters in the function and you want to invoke it, so yeah. And you only want to invoke 2 out of those 5, is it going to come out good, or do you have to invoke the 5?
Okay, so this is good, and you're going to even make me explain something else I forgot to mention, right? So if you pass in 5, if you declare the function with 5 arguments like this, right? You can invoke it. I can invoke it with just 1, right? But as long as, let's say maybe this is 5, right? And you can see here, I only use 2. Okay, so if I invoke it with just those 2, it's going to work, right? So if I save this now, I'm going to explain something. Just hold on. If I go back, it will still display John Doe. But look at where the trick is, right? So these are just placeholder variables you're passing into this function. If I try to access them here, if I am expecting to access them here, for example, I use first name and last name, you have to pass them when you're invoking it. If you don't pass them, it's going to just return undefined or null, right? Well, here's the thing. Let me show you something. If let's say I move age here and put last name here. Can you see this now? So let's say you declared 5 variables or 5 arguments, and you want to, maybe you don't want to make use of all. My point is, what I'm just trying to say is you always have to call the function the way you passed the argument, right? So for example, I used first name and last name, right? And I invoked it with first name and last name here. If I save this, it's not going to come out well. You can see John undefined. Do you know why? It's expecting last name to be the 3rd argument. So all these arguments, the way you passed it is the way you call it with, right? So if first name is here, when you're invoking it, first name has to come first. If age is here, age has to come before last name. So to answer your question again, if you like declare a function with 5 or more variables, when you're calling it, the first thing you need to know is you need to pass in those variables arranged how you call them before it will always work, right? But it might kind of mess up your calculation or whatever you want to do with them. So you can play around with this to see how it behaves. But again, if you declare with 5 parameters, if you are calling it, you have to either call it with 5 parameters or you call it with the parameters you want to use. So for example, now I can do this. I can make age empty string and make cohort empty. I don't want to use it, and program empty. If I do this, it's going to work John Doe, right? So again, we just used only first name and last name, which is allowed. I can use age. Let me do plus age now. Plus age. Let me put a space. Plus age.
No.
If I save this now, our age is an empty string. So let me put age as, let me see, 10. Yeah, we're going to see John Doe 10. So again, what you just need to know is when you pass in multiple arguments, when you're invoking the function, you have to pass values according to the placeholders you passed. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Otman. Shalom.
Hello. The movie will ask them the name. What?
Hi, Shalom.
Hi, Sammy. I think you're gonna get to that. So I was gonna ask, please, can you go back to the VS Code?
All right.
So I was gonna ask, can we not just go get full name brackets, and it would give us what we need instead of going to redeclare it?
Like this?
Like instead of going let full name equals this, we can just go get full name and then
I was just trying to find, it's going to return full name. So if I do this get full name, if I just display get full name outrightly, it's going to bring the same results.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that part.
Yeah, so just know when you invoke the function, it returns this value and you can use it. So I just decided to save it in a variable. You can use it anywhere or anyhow you want.
My other question is this document.get element by ID. I believe that's how we get we have it show up on the web page. So if we do console.log, that just shows up on our console, correct?
Yeah, shows up on your developer console, yeah.
Okay. So if I know someone asked this already, or I think I asked as well, and you said we can just go ahead and create, instead of referencing like HTML, we can just go ahead and just create a JavaScript file and run it. Now, if we don't reference it on the HTML, or if we don't reference any HTML file, how would it run? I don't know if I make sense with that. If we don't reference HTML at all, would it still run on the website, or it would then come up on the console now? I just want to get that part.
Okay, so that's a very good, curious question, and it's curiosity, right? So if you don't, maybe if you just have a script file and you don't have a HTML file attached, right? So the only way you have maybe anything run on the browser if it's an HTML file, right? So if you don't have this attached to a HTML file and just want to use console.log, you can run the code or run it in your VS Code terminal, okay? So I don't think I have taken you guys, okay, we only installed Git, right? You need a software called Node, or you need to have installed the JavaScript engine on your computer, right? So this is the command that will help you run this file without going to the browser or connecting to an index file. So I think maybe later, maybe after, I think I have a class on my calendar for JavaScript dev tools and all those stuff. I'm going to take everyone through installing Node on their computer, right? So with Node is it's the same JavaScript engine that runs JavaScript on the web browser is what we call Node, right? Or V8. So when you install it on your computer, I can just do Node and run this file. Let me see. I'm not outputting anything. Okay, let me see. Yeah, it's shouting because I don't want to use a document. Let me just use, let me show you what you're talking about. Console.log, get full name, and if I do this now and run, I'm going to see the output. I don't know if you can see my console. I'm going to see the output I saw on my browser in my console. So maybe if in our next class, not tutorial class, I'm going to take everyone through how to install Node. But again, if you don't want to connect this to, or if you're not connecting this to HTML, you can run this in your VS Code terminal or your Git bash or your Mac terminal, something like that.
Okay, that's helpful. I asked that because I learned about the Node, but I just didn't know how to maneuver it. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Sagal?
Yeah, hi Sammy. So I have a question about the code. the get full name. If we go
All right.
back to the, yeah. So on the function, you know how you have get full name and then you have let result, right?
Yeah.
Can we just not say, instead of redefining another variable, can we just not say return result equal to first name and all the concatenation? Would that, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can't do return result, right? So return is a keyword to return a value. Let me see. Return result equals to, let me see if this works. Yeah, so my VS Code automatically kind of put this in parentheses, but you can just do return. Let me get back. You can just do return first name. You can return it, right? Can you return first name equals first name plus last name plus age, and it will work just fine. John Doe.
Oh, but then it won't work if we define another, like, as you just said, like return, there was a return result equal to, won't work? No.
It worked.
Oh, it works. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Omobi. Hi, Omobi.
Hi, Sammy. Please, can you go back to your VS Code? Yes. So after declaring the function, is it that there are two ways to have my result displayed on the web browser? Like I can see you said let full name is get full name, that's command, and the other one is get element by ID. Is it either of that I could use, or I need to put both? I need to state both commands.
Yeah, okay, let me just show you something, right? So it's not like there are two ways, right? But what you need to know is this function declaration returns a value, and the value is result. Yes. So if you can see here, our result is the full name of the person plus the age, right? Yes. So you know it returns a result. So like what we had in variables, if I do let x equals 5 plus 4, right? We understood the first and second day that JavaScript will compute these two stuff. It will always, okay, first of all, let me say JavaScript reads from left to right, reads code from left to right, right? So it will always compute these two, then assign the result to this one, right? Yes. So that our let full name variable, right, equals get full. So what you should know, what JavaScript does, it will first run this function in memory and say, oh, what is the end result of running this function? Result. What is result? The person's first name, last name, and age. Okay. By the syntax of variable, assign the full name of the person to this variable. So I just did a shortcut, or not really a shortcut, but I just did a long cut by assigning the value to this variable, then using the variable here initially. So see what I did was just, I put the variable here. So what this line of code does, right? So since we are learning JavaScript and I'm teaching you JavaScript, there are many ways I can run JavaScript, right? But I want everyone to be able to see it on the web page. What this does, this is called DOM manipulation, right? So it's manipulating the HTML file from JavaScript. I'm just displaying the value of full name on my page. So what you should know is the end result of get full name, always like get full name. Since we return the value, if I'm assigning the value to this variable and I'm using this command here, we've not talked about this, so don't let it confuse you. I'm using this command here to display the full name variable on the web page. Is that clear?
Yes, it is. It's clear. Okay, so you know when you were taking us HTML, you told us that it's the template boiler is divided into the head and the body and all of that. For JavaScript, is there anything that has to be a constant on the template itself before we can do anything? Because sometimes I practice with what you've taught us in class, but it doesn't display on my HTML. Then Grace asked the question where you said we need to include the HTML, we need to reference the HTML sheet on this on this script, on the JavaScript script. So I just don't know, is there any other thing that we need to declare before we start working on the script itself?
Like a boilerplate or something?
Yes.
You don't need a boilerplate. There's no boilerplate for JavaScript.
Okay.
Yeah, no boilerplate, right?
All right, thank you.
Okay. Ola?
Hi.
Hi, Ola.
Yeah. So can you go back to the VS Code?
Okay.
I have a little background from, say, Python and R. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And when you were talking about the first name, age, and last name, and the arrangement, how they were supposed to come according to the way you declare them before invoking them, I was thinking, can't we just maybe assign the values into the variables, like first name equals this, age equals this? Won't that work?
It will work, right? It will work, but I'm trying as much as possible.
No, not in here. Like when you are like invoking the functions, instead of making it a consecutive arrangement, can't we say maybe call cohort first, then last name second, but like assign them into the function? Is that not possible?
I don't understand your question. Can I come again?
Like now, as you said, let's say get full name user dot first name.
Yeah.
Can we say get full name user dot cohort equals so, then age equals 10, then something like that, instead of making them showing consecutively?
So you're saying I should like, let's do like user dot first name equals like the name directly here.
Yeah, the name directly. Then instead of declaring age next, we may go to say cohorts, or maybe do last name equals the last name, then age after that. Would that work or not?
No, so it won't work on invocation, but it will work on declaration, right? So let me show you what you're talking about. So they are what we call default parameters. I don't know if that's what you're talking about. First of all, to answer maybe your second or third question, there are different ways to just control this, right? So if I do what you're asking, put first name here, put cohort here, and put maybe age here, right?
Yeah.
The way I assessed it from here, look at here, look at this. This is first name. Remember, these are all placeholders. So let me do this. A, I think this would be more descriptive. B, C, D, E. Okay. So I'm returning results equals A, then C is my last name, then B is my age, right? So I think let's use this.
Yeah.
I passed it, I declared it with A, B, C, D, E, right? So if I'm calling here, in my codes, I use A, C, E, and I'm calling A, like I'm directly calling the variables, right? So it expects A to be the first index. So these are all indexes. Expect C to be the third index. So if I come here and pass a variable here, let's say C is last name, right? And let me just put this outrightly, John. What can you see from here, right? I'm passing John as the first index. And look at my declaration. The first index is A. I'm using A as first name.
So what I'm saying is, if we say B equals John.
Yeah. So then, this is where default values come, right? I can do B equals my last name here. I didn't want to go into that. Then I can do C, which is age, equals 10. So what default values just does is, in case when I'm invoking this, I don't give a value for these stuff, it's going to use the default value. For example, now, let me take this back to first name so I don't confuse other persons. First name, last name, and age. Okay, so I'll say age equals 10. Then cohort equals cohort 3, right?
Yeah.
So in case I'm invoking this function and I don't pass an age, for example, now I put maybe ages, I put an empty. Let me see if empty string will work. Then last name, then cohort, empty string, empty string. Let me see. Okay, that didn't work. Let me remove the value. That didn't work still. Age equal, am I using age? I'm not using cohort. Let me see, return cohort. This is funny. Is that the first name? Is that the last name? Okay, let me just put it outrightly, right? But I know you can use default values. Cohort 3, program equals developer, right? Then if I do this, it's returning 3 for me. If I change this to 5, hold on, it's 25 for me. If I don't put a value, trying developer because
you are returning only cohorts. Maybe
I
that's the reason.
No way. It's supposed to return 3 if I don't put a value. So I don't know why the default value is not working, but what I'm just trying to explain, you can't do this here, right? Age equals to 10. You can't do it when invoking it here. You have to do it when declaring it. I'm just going to check why.
Could it be because you have the .inner HTML equals full name for your display on line 22? Does that matter?
No, that's not it.
For that cohort notch.
Yeah, we're returning like the result of this function, right? So it's supposed to return whatever the computation is. So my issue is I give cohort a default value of 3, right? Wait. I gave cohort a default value of 3. So if I don't pass cohort, it's supposed to use this default value or age. Let me say age.
Maybe that's because you are not adding into the let result equals so. Cohort is not there.
Okay, so age. I'm using age no. So yeah, I don't know why this doesn't work right now, but it's supposed to work ideally.
Sammy.
Hi.
Yeah, can you put a comma after first name? You have one already, put another one, let's see. No, not up there in the declaration.
Here?
Yes.
No, it's going to try an error.
Okay.
Okay, so let's not waste time with this, but what Ola was talking about, right, or what he's asking is, you can assign default values here, but I didn't want to go into it here first. I wanted everyone to understand like the basics of functions, because this is a little bit complex. It's even giving me myself issues.
Yeah, and another one I want to ask is, you know, when you said sum, when you declared sum number 1 plus number 2, what if we want to do, say, like normal thing, we can sum like 100 values at the same time? Maybe we are using calculator, we are using our computer. Do we have to say number 1 plus number 2 plus number 3, or is there a way where we can just declare a variable that shows that this thing can have as many numbers as possible?
Can you please come again, sorry?
Okay, like sum number 1 plus sum number 2.
Yeah.
Is there an arrangement or an allowance for, say, you are adding several numbers, not really the total numbers of variables you declared, maybe more than the number of variables you've declared in the function?
Okay.
Yeah, is there like an allowance for that, or maybe a convention for that?
That's why you are the programmer, right? So we're going to get, I'm not sure we'll go to get to problem solving, right? So yeah. Let's say number 1, number 2, and you're saying, what if you want to add multiple numbers, right?
Yeah.
Number 2. Right, so there are a couple of ways you can do it, right? I've built a calculator before, so I kind of know what you're talking about. So you can maybe combine the sum function, or you can accept multiple parameters like 5, 6, or 7 and add them together, but it's not effective or efficient. So if you want to add multiple numbers, right? So maybe I'm just going to give you, since you asked, I'm going to give you a typical example of how those calculators work. So if you press in 2 plus 2, why am I pressing S? Maybe 2 plus 2. If you hit the plus sign again, right? Maybe before even if you hit the equal to, if you hit the plus sign again, my program already has summed this. I don't know if you use a calculator. If you hit the plus sign, it's either it shows you the results below already and expect you to add another number, right? So the ideal thing to do is 2 plus 2. If you receive a plus sign, we're going to see how to programmatically do all those. I'm going to add these 2 first and be expecting another number. If you put in a third number, I'm going to add the product of this 2 plus 2 with the 4. So it's always advisable to use 2 numbers for sum. But if you are very, very sure, maybe your program accepts 5 digits to sum, yeah, why not? You can create 5 parameters and add all of them. But if you're talking about how a calculator works, any sum, most of the sum functions are just 2 numbers. So when you add 2 plus 2, if you click equal to, it sums it. If you click addition, it sums this 2, then it's waiting for your next input. So
not necessarily addition or calculator, but okay, let's use average instead.
Okay.
The average can be like an average of maybe 100 numbers or an average of say 3,000 occurrence. How do we give allowance for imputation of 3,000 variables?
First of all, you will not want to put 3,000 variables in one function, right? But there's what we call function destructuring. I won't want to go into it again. You can put as many, I can just say, let me look for the syntax, right? There's what we call function destructuring, right? Function parameter destructuring, right? So if I check this, just hold on, A, B. Yeah, so look at it here. So I can say let sum equals A, B. I can just call it rest or others, right? I can access, so when I'm calling this function, right, if I want to call sum A, B, I can put up to 1 million other parameters if I want.
Right.
And
that's exactly what I was looking for.
Yeah, to access the other ones, when I want to use, this is an array, so I can just do maybe, this is just complex, I don't want to go into it, but you can accept multiple parameters by doing, it's called the rest operator, order or more numbers or anything you want to do, we'll see. Okay, so I don't want to yeah. Thanks, Ola. I'll manage. Enobong.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to say, anytime you want to use somebody's name, my name is there in full. That's all.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to put that into consideration. Omo.
Okay, so Sammy, is it that we can use that return? Can you please go back to your visual? Yeah, thank you. So this return results, right? Can we use it to invoke? Right? I just wanted to confirm as part of the function block area. Can we use this return to invoke?
By invoke, what do you mean? Like call the function like this?
Yes, yes.
Like return then the name of the function or something?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, because I think I saw you do something like that. I wanted to be sure. This return, is it part of the function, or we can use it to invoke, to call the function?
No, we cannot use it to call the function. So return is not like, but return is a JavaScript keyword, right? So when we get to loops, you're going to see me do something like maybe a while loop or a for loop. Then if I meet my condition, while true, if I meet my condition, I can just do return. I can write return. In fact, if I write return here, this code should just like return means exit. Okay, I can't write return here. So whenever, and it's always used in blocks. So whenever I write return, it means like exit. So see, let me just show you something. If I put let y equals high here, can you see it's blurring out the code? Can you see what this my little this thing is saying? Unreachable code detected. So return means exit, just stop here, right?
Oh, okay.
So what if you like puts 1 million lines of code here, it's not going to run. The program is not going to see it. So that's just what return does.
Oh, okay. So then for this let, so that goes back for us to invoke, we go back to our normal let declaration, right?
Okay, so I think, was it Shalom? Someone asked this earlier. I'm putting this let full name here just to receive the variable, right? So if you want to invoke a function or you want to do something, you mustn't necessarily save it in a variable, right? So let me clear this confusion. Let me create another function output to, well, let me just use output, right? And say param, I'll just console.log the result, right? Right now, we are not returning any value. Console.log param. Then if I invoke this output Sammy, I'm calling the function. If I go to my console, I'm going to see it in my console. What I'm trying to explain is you mustn't necessarily save it in a variable. Why I'm doing let full name is because I'm expecting a value here and I want to save it in a variable. So some functions might not return anything. They might just do some stuff and you move out or you move to your next line of code. But why I did this, I wanted to get the return value in a variable. I think I did. I can as well just cut this out or copy it out, comment this out, and just call the invocation here directly. Or better still, I can console or log the invocation and it's going to put it in the console. Let me just save this. Can you see John Doe 10? So this was just me trying to save the results in a variable. Do you get that?
Okay, so you could probably reuse the variable somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. So I could reuse the variable somewhere else rather than writing this long invocation over and over again.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Shalom. Okay, I think you've already spoken. Adekunle.
Sammy, I think maybe towards the end, I'll ask my question towards the end of class because I may have to share my screen.
Oh, wow. Okay, Omo just spoke. Yeah, I think we can go ahead now, right? We've literally played with functions and the questions has made us like kind of go deeper on functions, right? So they are made, like I said, right? If I go to the resource and go to the function section, there are a whole lot of stuff about functions, right? Parameters. I think if I go here now, I'll see what Ola was talking about, default parameters. So see, look at this. So if a function is called with missing arguments less than declared, the missing values are set to undefined. Sometimes this is set to blah, 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 but you can assign a default parameters by doing y equal to when you are declaring the function. Okay, so let me see if I'll talk about that before we go. But let's just practice with functions. Then maybe we'll come to that when we want to do other advanced stuff. So I want to talk about comparisons next. I know we touched this yesterday, but I need to go over it again before I talk about conditions and loops. So comparisons, right? Comparisons are very important in programming. You're going to see it everywhere. You're going to see it in Salesforce. And I'm sure most of us have used it in, what's it called? By using formula field, right? Okay, let me see. Yeah, so taking this. Yeah, so comparison and logical operation are used to test for true or false, right? So I think you can rather, aside from the like definition of programming or what programming is, you can just use, like, you can always say programming is just it's always run by checking true or false, right? Everything we do, or most of what we do, is dependent on true or false. If this is true, if this is false, do this, what is today's date, do this, do that, right? So given that x equals 5, the table below explains the comparison operators, right? I think I touched on this table yesterday. So equal to, so the equal sign in programming is an assignment operator, but if you want to check equality, you use the equal sign twice, right? So with this table, x equals 5, right? So comparing x, 5 and 8 returns false. I think we played around with this yesterday, so let me just clear this and clear this, right? So we'll have a clean screen. Let's just play around with comparison, right? So x equals 8 returns false. I think I'm going to use my console for this, so I'm not going to be saving and coming out, right? So I told you, you can run code in your JavaScript console. So if I do let x equals 5, right? I'm going to save that. So x equals 8 returns false. X equals 8 returns false. So what this means is JavaScript compared these two values, right? Compared 5 and 8. And we all know that 5 is not 8, right? So it returns false. So these are just comparison stuff. And I know we've all done this in Salesforce for formula field, right? So if you try x equals 5, it's going to return true, right? So 5 is equal to 5 true. But there are some other stuff you need to know about this. So equal. So equal, the triple equal sign equal value type and equal value and equal type, right? If I go back and try x equal to 5, let me see if you change the value of x. Okay, 5 is going to evaluate to true. Let me see something. Yeah, but if I do x triple equal to 5, it's going to evaluate to false because this 5, even if it has 5 inside, is a string. So if you remember our data types, right? This is a number or this is a string. So the triple equal sign checks for both data type and value. So, but these are just kind of additional stuff you need to know. But basically, what comparison means is compare two figures, right? I wish I could open like Salesforce to go to the formula. We've done this. I think if you've attended clinics or if you don't, we've done this a couple of times, right? Equal to, greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, right? So this is basically what the formula editor just does behind the scene, right? I can do x is x greater than 6. That's false, definitely. When we get to conditionals, we're going to see how all these comparisons help, right? And it's not just with numbers. So we're just trying kind of using numbers as an example. I can do is first name, maybe is string equals a number, or is first name empty. Maybe if I have a first name variable, right? I can, let me see, let's first name because maybe the user did not, okay, let me say let's first name equals Sammy, right? Cool. I can say first name equals Enobong suggested we use his name. I don't know if I spelled it correctly. Yeah, so it's going to output false, right? So now I compare the string. First name is Sammy. Is first name equal to Enobong? Nah, it's going to output false. So maybe when we build a real program, you're going to see like, okay, if this user, this is like kind of, is this user Enobong, is this person's username Sammy? False. Then if it's false, do this. Else, do that. So when we get to conditionals, we're going to see all those. So there's a greater than, there's less than. How you can benefit from this world is come and try this yourself, right? There is not equal to, right? So if I go to let me clear this so I will have space. X not equal to 5 is false because x is equal to 5, right? So x not equal to 8 is true, right? Because x is not equal to 8, right? So you can just play around with the comparisons because we're going to use them a lot in switches, conditions, and loops, right? So how can it be used? Comparison operators can be used in conditional statements. In fact, it's mainly used in conditional statements to compare values and take action depending on the result, right? So this is a powerful statement. This is what I was looking for. So comparison operators can be used in conditional statements to compare values and take action depending on the result, right? I'm just going to copy this and just show us what this means. I'll copy this now and paste in my code. So if, okay, let me just declare the variable, let's text. So if, okay, so we're going to get to this, right? So if you've not encountered this before, we're going to get to this. So if open parenthesis age, do I have an age variable? Let me declare age, let age equal to 2. I'm 2 years old. So if age is less than 18, text equals to too young to buy alcohol. So if I output text now, we're going to see that the value of text is too young to buy alcohol because our comparison evaluated to false. Let me play around with this so you can see a typical example. Let me kind of make this better looking. Right? So we can see this. If age is less than 18, so if I take this to my console, right? You can see here age is 2. Let me just copy. Let's go back to our console. Let age equal 2. Age has already been declared. Okay, in my code, age has already been declared. Let me do age equal 2. I've declared age. Okay, let's new age equal 2, right? Then we want to check if new age is less than 18, right? So you see that the comparison evaluates to true. So like conditionals just works with true or false. What this means is if this is true, right, run this block of code. So remember when I was explaining functions, I said in JavaScript, these are blocks, right? So if anything in this parenthesis is true, we can have like multiple conditions here. We're going to get to that. Run this block of code. There's an other statement, right? Else, like if it's false. Okay, let me just do text. I'll explain this text. You can get drunk. Okay, that's you can go ahead. Right. So if I save this now and check, so age is still equal to, okay, now, so if age is less than 18, this evaluates to true because our age variable is 2. So maybe the user that is trying to buy alcohol is 2 years old. So this block of code will run. Else, if age is not less than 18, if it's greater or equal to 18, yeah, you can go ahead. So if I change our age to 20 now, this person is eligible to take or buy alcohol, right? If I save this and check our code or our browser, you see, yeah, you can go ahead. So what you should pick from this is comparisons. Comparisons help you. Let me look at that definition again. Sorry. So comparison operator can be used in conditional statements to compare values and take action, right? So if you can see, we compared values and we took action, right? So you can do a whole lot of stuff with this. And I think we've played around with this in our again Salesforce formula field. So compare these figures. I can have multiple comparisons here. If all of them evaluate to true, run this action. If it's false, run this action. I can change, I can do more, but for now, just like kind of, this is just the basics of conditions and comparisons. So if I go to continue, okay, you will learn more about the use of conditional statements in the next chapter, right? So aside from comparison operators, let me see logical operators, conditional ternary person. Let me not like kind of add like more operators, right? Comparing different types. Okay. Apart from comparison operators, I just wanted to check if everyone is like a little bit comfortable with this, right? Let me just clear out this else statement. So basically, these are comparisons, or comparisons is comparing two figures or two data types to ascertain whether the value is true or false. Then we use the true or false value to run conditions, which is mainly done with if statements. We're going to see some other conditions or some other keywords we can use to run conditions, right? So apart from comparison, less than, so if you come here, maybe later you can just come and read, these are comparison operators, equal to, not equal to, greater than, less than, blah, blah, blah. They're what we call logical operators, right? So logical operators are used to determine the logic between variables or values. Given that x equals y, so this might be a little bit mathematical, and y equals 3. The table below explains logical operators. So we can use and, like this is the English description. We can use or, this is the English description. We can use not, right? So we also have this in some of our formula fields in Salesforce, but I'm just going to give a little example, but I'll not like kind of go deep into it, right? Because it might look a little bit confusing for learners. So if I go to my code editor and let's create two new variables, right? Let's A equals 100. Let's B equals 50. Let's C equals 20, right? So with normal, I don't know if you can see this, with normal comparison operators, right? I can do A is A greater than B, right? I'll get true, right? So this is just the basic of what we did the last time. But with logical operators, you can combine them, right? So I want to check is A greater than B and is B greater than C. So what JavaScript will do is it will evaluate both of them and return a Boolean true or false. So what this does is it checks 2 times, right? So if previously we just did A greater than B true because A is 100, B is 50, right? And B greater than C. So logical operators help us combine like comparison of like help us combine statement, right? I can check if X is less than 10 and y is greater than 1. A typical use case for this, right, is maybe if you have a software with maybe authentication or something, like maybe the Black Force website or something, I can check if this user has a profile. Okay, let's say the way training schedule works, right? You can't see Zoom link or training for a class you don't belong to, right? So like we can say if user.profile is not developer, is, let's say, is equal developer, right? You're going to see developer, what's it called? You're going to see developer classes, right? I don't want to write, like, let's see, developer classes. But I want to like kind of check two conditions, right? Because developers can also see Salesforce admin, right? So if profile is developer and user.subscription or has subscription, right? Because it's only subscribed users, both standard and professional, that can see maybe clinic sections, right? So if profile is developer and subscription, or user.has subscription, let me see how I'm going to do this subscription. Okay, let me just use equals professional, right? I can show developer class and admin clinic class. So I was just trying to kind of show you an example of how you can chain comparisons, right? Again, you can do just one comparison. If it's a developer, do this, else do that. But you can add multiple. I can chain this up to 3, 4, 5, but I don't want to make it more confusing, okay? So these are what logical operators does. Logical operator just helps you chain comparison operators, right? You can check two values. Okay, for example, I just used and. So, okay, what I didn't explain to you, right? For and, both part of the argument has to evaluate to true, right? So I want to check if A is greater than B and B is greater than C. So if A is not greater than B, this will return to false. Let me show you. If I try if B is greater than A and B is greater than C, it will return false because one of the statements is one of the statements is false, right? Okay. Because one of the statements is false. So these are logical operators. You can just come and play around with them. Then these are comparison operators, but you're going to use, in fact, you're going to use comparison operators more. Okay. Then there's conditional ternary operator. I don't want to go into ternary operators now because it's a little bit more complex. But in a nutshell, comparison operators, please, can you mute? Thank you. Yeah, comparison operators are used in conditional statements to compare values, right? And when those values are compared, you take action depending on the results, okay? So before I go to conditionals, right? So it was like we need to understand a bit about comparison before we go to conditionals, right? I'm going to ask if anyone like has any question on comparison operators or how comparisons work, right? Then we're going to go to conditionals. So this is where this is like, I think most of the time, if you're building softwares, this is what you're going to be using most of the time. But let me see if anyone is not clear about comparison, the equal to, the and, the greater or less than, or any of those stuff returning true or false. Okay, hi Sharon, you can go ahead.
Sammy, sorry, I'll always have questions. The VS Code you had, if user profile, yeah. So that I see you commented developer class. Is that what you wanted to show? Sorry, I missed that part.
Okay, so I didn't want to write extra code. I just used comment show developer class. So maybe you're going to write code that shows developer class and show admin class because this person is eligible to view developer like schedule, like maybe developer classes and admin class. So I didn't want to write additional code to show that, right? That's why I just used the comment. So just know that if this evaluates to true, if this comparison evaluates to true, any code inside this place, this block is going to run. Okay.
Okay.
So let me just like kind of help you make it clear. Console.log, I am a developer, and I can do else. So remember, I said else is if it evaluates to false. If this is not true, I don't like typing. I'm just going to copy and paste this. It can be, I am a basic subscriber. How to spell that? Subscriber. Yeah. So if I go to my code, it's going to throw an error because I don't have user. So you get the I'm sure you get the point, right?
Yeah, I do. I just didn't see that part, so that's why I asked. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we can just use the remaining time to go into the fun stuff, right? So everyone understands comparison. So let's go to conditional statements. So conditional statements are used to perform different actions based on different conditions, right? So very often when you write code, you want to perform different actions for different decisions. So we can use conditional statements to do this, right? So in JavaScript, we have the following conditional statement. We have if, we have else, we have else if, then we have switch, right? So if, else, I've showed us if, else, but I've not showed us what else if does, right? So these are just keywords and commands. I'm going to show us how they behave and what they are used for. So use if to specify a block of code to be executed if a specified condition is true. So if I clear this, let me clear everything and start afresh. And I do if, I put a parenthesis like this, and put a block, right? Whatever condition I put here, whatever block of whatever like comparison I put here, once it evaluates to true, if you remember our comparisons, right? It evaluates to true or false. Once whatever I have here evaluates to true, this block of code is going to run. It might be alert the user, send the user an email, go to so and so place. It doesn't matter, right? But what you should know is the if statement is if this evaluates to true, run this, right? So use if to specify a block of code to be executed if a specified condition is true. Then use else to specify a block of code to be executed if the same condition is false, right? So if you remember, if I go back to my PDF, you're going to see Boolean is the result, right? All comparison operator returns a Boolean value. If I go back to comparisons, I used to test for true or false. So no matter what, if a condition is true, so okay, what I wanted to say, right? A condition has to be either one of the two. It has to be true or false, right? So true, or same with switches, on or off, right? So if true, run this code. Else, it will always come into this code. It's else block means false. It will always come here, right? So if else, so maybe if you've heard it before, maybe if you don't know how it works, so this is how, we write if else, right? And the sweet part is, I don't know if you heard Babatope mention it, you're going to use it everywhere. It's the same thing, it's the same logic. If comparison, if evaluate to true or false, run this, else run this. It's everywhere. So if you can just learn it or maybe get familiar with it, Salesforce will be easy for you. Not just Salesforce, every programming language. The syntax might be different, but if and else are always there. You're always going to use it, right? So let me just go back to my conditionals. Then else to specify a block of code to be executed if the same condition is false. So if it's true, do this, right? This here. If it's false, run this code. Okay, we're going to use examples shortly. So else is to specify a new condition to test if the condition is false, right? So I'm going to go into else if later, or let me just write it now. So for example, if I do if, let me see, let me declare a variable here like name, user equals Enobong has volunteered. I don't know if this is correct. Yeah, Enobong. Then if user equal Enobong. Okay, if user equals Sammy. We all know this is not going to evaluate to true, right? So I'm just trying to explain what if else if does, right? So maybe I have a variable I want to check across multiple conditions, right? So if user equals Sammy, but I don't want this to fail. I want to catch the actual value, right? I can do else if user equals, maybe I'll now use my second guess, right? And no bong. Okay, run this block of code. Else, if all of them evaluate to false, run this block of code. So let me just explain this, right? So I said earlier that if this first parenthesis is true, it's going to run this block of code. But there are some cases where you want to test maybe your comparison with multiple values, right? So in our case, I actually want to catch this user. I want to know if this is an outbound. Maybe a good use case would be if this is an admin, if admin, or if maybe manager. But the else if command just brings back the ability to use this if. Remember, if only looks for a truthy statement or true. So if this fails, it's supposed to go to the else block, false block, right? But if you still want to kind of check, oh, I really need to know who this is, or I want to catch this particular piece of flow, right? You can do else if. So else if just brings this if back again and gives you the ability to check for a true. So else if user equals a not bong, we want this code. Okay, so let's not just make it over confusing, right? So if always checks for a true, like if this is true, run this. But if you still want to check if the variable is equal to another value, you use else if to hold it, right? And I know someone is going to ask, I can do multiple else ifs. I can do, oh, if this fails, maybe I put Sharon here and it fails. I can do another else if. How do you spell else? Okay, else if, and create another block, okay? But I don't want to make it too complex. But the thing is, if checks for a true, but if it fails, it's supposed to go to the else, but you can catch it, right? You can hold it and check for another variable, another value. Else if it fails, you can continue chaining in, but I don't advise you to chain many, but just know this is the syntax, and we're going to use real life examples now. So the if statement. Use the if statement to specify a block of JavaScript code to be executed if a condition is true. We already mentioned that. Note that if in lowercase matters. So I think we talked about this earlier. JavaScript is case sensitive, right? This is wrong. It's already throwing an error, right? So if you use caps lock, it will understand what you're talking about, right? So JavaScript is case sensitive. You can't use caps lock or mix it with capital and lesser letters. So let's say an example. Make a good day greeting if hour is less than 18 o'clock, right? So let me see what they used as hour here. Okay, if new date.get hours equals good evening. So let's try this, right? So this is a more dynamic example than what I've been doing. So I'm just going to clear this. Don't worry about this, and we've not done dates, right? So this is just a way to get the date. So if let me see today. Let me just show you what this is before we go ahead, right? So if I output this, let today equals new day.get hours, you're going to see it's 2059. So it like kind of, this just brings out, this is a JavaScript method that just gives you time, right? I told you we have like some utility methods in JavaScript that helps you. So if I remove this get hours, well, let me just play around with it before you go ahead. You can do get year, right? And oh, it's giving me the year from, I forgot, in 1990 something, right? But what you should know, this is JavaScript's default method, like we had mat.py. So I want to use it for our example, right? Get hours. If I check, it's 21:09 because we are at 9 p.m. exactly. So I'm going to kind of go back to our example. So if date is less than 18, we're going to greet good day. So let me copy this and just paste it. So this is just a typical example of how you see in your social media apps, right? But I've saved this in a variable, so I'm just going to change it to today. So if today, remember, today is the time in hours, like maybe 18 o'clock, 19 o'clock, 20. If it's less than 18, don't do this because we already have our document.getElement by ID. I'm going to create a variable. I hope everyone understands what I'm doing. Let greeting equal an empty string. I'll just say let's greeting. And if today is less than 18, greeting equals good day. Then I will paste in greeting. Undefined block of code. Okay. Let me use var. Why undefined though? Okay, so that wasn't even the issue. I did not put an else. So let me put an else statement. Okay, so let's take a look at our example, right? So we are trying to compare if today. Remember, today we used a JavaScript default method. I can as well outrightly write this, but this just helps us make it dynamic, right? We are getting the exact time, right? So the value of today, if I output it again one more time, you're going to see is 21, which is 9. If you know it, like our 24-hour clock, right? Is this 9? It's 21, 9. Yeah, so 21, it's 9, right? So we're checking if today or if the hour, if time is less than 18. I think 18 is 6 p.m. in the evening, right? So this is like just saying if the time is less than 6, say good day, else good evening. I can change it to good night because 9 is late. So if we check, I'm outputting today again. So if we check, you're going to see good night, right? So this is just a typical dynamic example of how we use conditionals, right? So if today is less than, let me change it. If it's, let me say greater than 18, we know it's 21, right? I can say greeting, we know it won't enter here. It's going to definitely enter. No, it's going to enter here, right? It's going to show good day now because 21 is definitely greater than 18. So please, let me just change it so it doesn't confuse anyone. Let's use weekdays, right? So Friday. So I can say if today equal Friday, I can say greeting should be happy weekend, right? Then else greeting should be back to work, okay? Because it's a weekday. And if I had put greeting, we're going to say happy weekend because the today variable is equal to Friday. So I hope everyone just get the gist with this, right? You use if statement, check for comparisons, then you run a code. If it's false, you assign a different variable, you run something else. So there are a whole lot of ways you can play with this. You can use users, you can use logging, like if powers like a major chunk of all that we do in development, right? So let me see if I can see another example. So the else statement, use the else statement to specify a block of code to be executed if the condition is false. We already talked about that. So if the hour is less than 18, create a good day greeting, otherwise good evening. Yeah. So if hour, I think they changed it here. Let me see. Yeah, so it's still the same thing. So they did get hours to get the exact time. As you can see, they still fell to good evening because this is dynamic. I think this code was, I don't even know when this code was written, but because my time says 21, it's telling me good evening. So still the same thing we ran in our code editor. The else if statement, right? So I can just come here. Let me change to Friday. Back to work. And if I change this to Friday, I can say, I'll explain. Let me just write this code. Else if today equals to Sunday. Let me use, yeah, Sunday. And greeting across Sunday. Okay, so I'm just going to change this to let me change this to Monday first and I'll explain. So if I go back, we're going to see back to work, definitely. So if today equals Friday, so our if statement is trying to check if our variable is equals to Friday. Remember, this can be anything. We're just using a string as an example. set the greeting to happy weekend. Else, if I want to check, like I said last time, I want to confirm if it escapes this true, I want to get another true, right? So else if it's Sunday, happy Sunday. Else, get back to work. So if I change it to Sunday right now, if I change it to Sunday and save, we're going to see happy Sunday. So I think conditionals with if are quite, it's a little bit straightforward. Just if true, run this code, else run this code, or else if run this code. Okay, let me see if there's something else we need to touch. Okay, let me see. Don't go into this. Yeah, so there are a whole lot of things you can play around with. I'm sure everyone knows how to create variables and other stuff. You can use if statement, check for numbers, check for equality, and just play around with if statement. So let me just take a pause and see if anyone has any question on what we've discussed so far. So if you have any question, you can just raise your hands. Opay me.
Yes, thank you, Sammy. So can we go back to your the code, the VS code, yeah? So the line 3 there, let greeting. I'm trying to understand. So is it that you're trying to declare, like what exactly is that? Are we trying to do there when you say let greeting? So my thought is always equal to something.
Okay, so yeah, I mentioned when we were talking about variables, right? So there's variable declare. You can declare a variable and leave it undefined and leave it empty. So let me see if I can look for it. No. Declaring variables, right? So creating a variable in JavaScript is called declaring a variable, right? So if I do this, I'm just declaring a variable. It's undefined now. But what you know how you know how to declare a variable is let greeting equals maybe an empty string or maybe hello. So what I did here now is I declared and assigned it on one line, right? But I can declare it and maybe I don't have what to put in it yet and just leave it as an empty container. It's going to have a value of undefined.
Okay. So which, okay.
Yeah, do you understand that?
Yes. So that means line 6, 8, and 10, you can reuse it in multiple.
Yes. You can reassign values to it. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Adekunle?
I don't think I have any question.
Okay.
Let me drop my.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess everyone is following or everyone understands, right? Yeah. So I don't want to kind of talk about anything new for this evening again. Okay, though I have loops in my list, but I want to, okay, we've talked about comparison conditionals and functions. I can just touch on loops, but again, I'm going to come back to loops because it might have less time to talk about it. But if everyone can just be comfortable, let me just write this out. Even if we don't get to DOM manipulation, right? Like Babatope talked about, if you can just be familiar with conditionals. Let me conditionals, loops, functions, variables and variable declarations, and comparisons. Definitely, they're just 5, 6, 7 basic things from here that if you can get really, really good or understand them, you're going to kind of have a breeze when you get to Salesforce, right? So comparisons, if, else, switch, for loops and while loops, objects. We've seen objects in Salesforce administrators as Salesforce admin a whole lot, right? And arrays and variables, right? So no one has any question on conditional. If else is a little bit straightforward and simple. Let me just look at loop. Then let's see how far we can go with loop and see if anyone had any questions on loop. Okay, so JavaScript loops, I think, yeah, run the same code over and over again, each time with a different value, right? So if you start programming, you're going to do this a whole lot. You're going to loop, you're going to want to find. I think someone asked me a question when we handled array and said, what if you have, what's it called? Maybe 100 elements in your array and you want to find a particular index of one. What you do is you loop through it. So looping through it is going to take, let me give an example. Let's array equals 1, 2, 3. That's not 3. Yeah. So if you, what looping just does, right, is going to, maybe you want to run a function or a particular line of code. It's going to take each element in this array and apply that action to the elements. We're going to see how that is done soon, right? And how it helps. So loops can execute a block of code a number of times, right? So loops are handy if you want to run the same code over and over again, each time with a different value. Often in this case, when working with arrays, right? So for example, now, I opened this up yesterday. I don't know if it was yesterday. You can see that they have, in fact, it's mostly run on arrays, right? You can see that we have an array of cars. And let's say typically, if you're building a website, you want to display a list of your cars. Definitely, most websites we see list of stuff, right? They might be arrays, they might be objects, but they are being looped over, right? So see what they did here. They created a variable, let text equals an empty string. Then this is the syntax for loop. We're going to get into it. For let I equals 0, this is the iterator. I is less than cars.length, I plus plus. We're going to get into this if this is a bit confusing, right? So what it just does is for each of the cars, it appends the text to it and adds a break. So let me just kind of go back and explain what the for loops does. So different kinds of loops. JavaScript support different kinds of loops, right? For loops, for in, for off, while, do while. We're going to focus on for loops, while, and a little bit on do while, right? So for loops through a block of code a number of times, right? For in loops through the properties of an object, okay? For off loops through the blah, blah, blah. So what I want to focus on is for and while loops, right? While loops through a block of code while a specified condition is true. So this is tricky, and you're going to combine your comparison knowledge with this, right? Let's just use a typical example. This is where, like, for example, when we had our functions, we said the syntax of function is the keyword, the function name, parentheses, then block of code, right? Excuse me. When you want to write a for loop, there's this syntax, right? It has its own syntax. So each of them has its keyword and its syntax, right? So the keyword is you like write the for, like the for keyword, for, open parentheses, then block, right? So in the parentheses, there are 3 statements ended with semicolon. If you don't put the semicolon, it's not going to work, right? Statement 1, statement 2, statement 3. Let's see what each of them means. So statement 1 is executed one time before the execution of the code block, right? Statement 2 defines the conditions for executing the block. Statement 3 is executed every time after the code block is run. It has executed, right? I'm going to take that one after the other. So this first statement is only executed once, right? So remember, this is the syntax for a for loop. The first statement is only executed once. So JavaScript will only do this once. I'm going to show you why shortly. This is the condition. Let me see. Statement 2 defines the condition for executing the block. So this is the condition for running this block. So again, statement 1 is only run once, right? So when statement 1 is run, it gets to statement 2. It checks, if statement true is true, like if this is going to be a comparison operator, right? If this is true, it's going to run the block. It comes back again. Remember, statement 1 always runs 1. It's going to check statement 2. If this is still true, it runs the block again. If this is still true, it just continues until the comparison here is not met, evaluates to false, right? Then statement 3 is executed every time after the code block is executed. So statement 3 is always run, right? So when this is finished, it will run statement 3. When this is finished, it will always run statement 3. So again, this is run once. I'm going to show you why. This is the comparison, right? Where we have our if today is equal, this is what it checks. So if this evaluates to true, it will run the block of code. Then this statement 3 always runs every time this evaluates to true. So let me just show you a typical example. I'll copy this and paste while still leaving our statement 1, 2, 3 above, right? I hope this is not too confusing, right? So statement 1, okay. So look here. We all know what this is, right? If I copy this out and paste it out here, right? So what this just does, it assigns a variable, let I equals 0. So remember, statement 1 is only run once, right? Let I equals 0. What this means is we are declaring the variable to use in the comparison, right? So let I equals 0. It doesn't do it again. It doesn't redeclare the value. And you know, if it tries to redeclare this variable, it's going to throw an error. So this only runs once. Let I equals 0. We're going to see why. Then I said statement 2, it's the comparison, right? So this is what JavaScript checks before it runs this block of code. So I'm going to copy this comparison out and come back here and paste it. So this is like typical of what we've been doing. Is I less than 5? This is a comparison, right? We can do is I equals to this, is I greater than this. So statement 1 is the declaration. Statement 2 is the comparison. So if this evaluates to true, this code will always run. So again, let I equals 0. Is I less than 5? If I is less than 5, run this code. Then I plus plus. I said statement 3 is always going to run, right? So let me explain all of them in one big picture. So the first statement declares the variable as 0. Every time the code block is run, it comes here to check if I has gotten to 5. But this one always gets runs because when you do 1, you want it to go to the next value, right? And if you remember what I plus plus done, I plus plus is the same thing. Let me just say, let I hope you can see my browser console. Let I equals to 0. I plus plus is the same thing as saying I equals I plus 1. What this does is I will now be equal to 2. Okay, yeah. So 0 plus 1, sorry. So if I do I equals I plus 1 again, I is going to be equal to 2. But rather, if I do I plus plus explicit, like directly, right? Let me see. It's going to add it, but I is going to be equal to 3. So this is just like a shortcut to add 1 to any variable. I showed it to us when we were at numbers increment, right? So if I go back to my explanation, the first statement declares I to 0. The second statement always checks if I is less than 5. So if you can see, our I is still 0. So if the JavaScript is 0 less than 5, true, run this code. After it runs this code, it runs this statement 3. So what this statement 3 does, it increases I. So I was 0, I plus plus will make I 1. Then to come and check, is 1 less than 5? Yes, run this code. After running this code, it comes here, I plus plus, I is now 2. Is 2 less than 5? Yes, run this code. So this is just how loops work, right? You declare a variable you are going to use for the iteration. You put a comparison to always run if it evaluates to true. Then this is the most important part. If you miss incrementing the variable, this is going to run forever. So I was at 3, right? So it's going to check, is 3 less than 5? True. Run this code. If you finish running the code, it comes here, I plus plus. It will make I 4. Is 4 less than 5? Yes. Again, run this. It will increase 4, 5. I++ will give you 5. Is 5 less than 5? No. 5 is equal to 5. It stops. Okay, so basically this is how for loops work. It's a little slightly different with while loop and others, but it's the same concept, right? Just know with for loop, you declare an iterator. It's mostly a number. You create a comparison that you want to check. So most times, this is just an example, right? You can have more descriptive stuff here. Maybe is this thing less than this or equal to this. Once this always evaluates to true, this block of code will run. When it runs, you increment the variable. If you omit this, in fact, it's not even going to work if I omit this. It's throwing an error. But you always have to increase the variable. So you always have to exit this, right? I'm just going to try to give a real case scenario. Okay, well, let's read the explanation. So statement 1 sets a variable before the loop starts, right? So before the whole loop starts, this is done. I explained that. Statement 2 defines the condition for the loop to run. I must be less than 5. So this is the condition. So anytime it runs, it checks this condition. Then statement 3 increases a value each time the code block in the loop is executed. Okay. You can insert many values in statement 1 separated by commas. Okay, we don't go into that now. It's going to make loops complex for us. So often statement 2 is used to evaluate the condition of the initial variable, right? So this is not always the case. JavaScript doesn't care. Statement 2 is also optional. So statement 3 increments the value, right? This is not always the case. Okay, so let me just give a typical example because they are going somewhere. So I'm going to use 5. So 5 is a kind of code description, right? So let's use this, right? So be very basic. I'm just going to console the log I. So we'll see how this works. So look at what we're doing. So look at what we're doing. We're saying let I equals 0, right? Whenever as long as I is less than 5, this is our comparison operator. Less than, this will evaluate to true. Run this block of code. What are we doing? We are just consoling I to the output, right? This will throw an error if I save. So it's going to run this code 5 times, and we're going to see 0 to 4 printed on the console. If I save this and go, can everyone see my console? Can you see this? So this is just a basic example. We can do more with loops, right? So what it just does is I is equal to 0. I'm going to explain it again. I is equal to 0. If is I less than 5, yes, run this code. What does this code say? Okay, let me add a string. Let me say this is the current value of I, and just concatenate I. Okay. So if I check this now, we're going to see it's going to loop out 5 times. This is the current value of I, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So what this does, right? If I is less than 5, it runs this block of code. So right now I'm just doing a console, but you can do anything, right? You can let's create an array. So let's create an array. Let cars equals tab. But someone was talking with Canon yesterday. Okay, I've forgotten the rest. On BMW. This is enough for cars, right? So let's do it with cars. Right? So I've shown you how you can do this with something very easy, right? Because our comparison here doesn't like really hold any water, right? So I can also change this to 10. And it's just going to run 10 times. But let's show us a real use case, right? This will just run this block of code 10 times and always increment it. But let's show us a real use case, right? I want to say let I equals 0. Whenever I is less than, rather than putting an explicit number, I'll put the length of our array. So if you're here yesterday, you know, if I do cars.length, it's going to give me the number of values in this array, right? Which should be 1, 2, 3, 4. So our loop will run 4 times. So when I is less than cars.length, I can just say console.log, this code block will run, but let me just output the current value or the current car we are iterating. Then I'll play around with it, right? Console.log cars index I. If I save this, it's going to give me access to all the cars individually, right? So Saab, Ford, Infiniti, BMW, right? So I'm going to explain what I did here again. For each of the cars in this list, I want to console the car at a particular index. Remember, let me go outside the loop. When we were doing variable, assessing a variable, right? If I want to access a variable, I'll access the variable via the index. Let's say cars index 2, it will give me Infiniti. Cars index 1, it will give me Ford, right? So what I just did here is I created a loop to loop over an array, right? Then I have access to every of the array elements inside here. Let me do something more fun, right? I can now say console.log black force cars or black force car or black force hyphen the name of the car, right? Cars index I. So you're going to see black force Saab, black force Ford, black force. So this just shows you that with loops, you can run a block of code over and over again for each of the value of an iteration, right? So I can carry Saab and do one thing to Saab and do the same thing I do to Saab and do to Ford. The sweet thing is I can do other, like I can use other JavaScript like stuff in here. I can use an if statement in here. So what you should know is this block of code, you can do anything in it. I can do if I want to check it now exactly, right? So this is where I'm going to explain our else if and if else very well. Now, if the current iteration, right, cars index 0, if it's equal to, sorry, I don't want to make this too complex. If it's equal to, no, if it's equal to, let's say, Ford, name it console.log, sorry. Don't append black force, append Salesforce. Then else append black force. If you see, when I'm supposed to have one with Salesforce, if cars, index I, sorry. Yeah, you're going to see if the current iteration is Ford, use Salesforce in like hyphen the cars. So this is just like how you use loop, right? So I won't confuse you. What loops just does is it goes through a particular, you can use it on array, objects, numbers, and runs the same block of code for each and every one of them. So again, statement 1 is declaring the iterator, the number of the start number, right? Statement 2 is the comparison, like it will always run this comparison, right? If it checks if this is true, it runs the code. Then statement 3 always runs after the code block runs to increment the iterator. Okay, so yeah, so that is all about for loops. I won't want to combine this with what's it called, the other types of loops, right? But I want everyone to just play around with this. But if you have any questions right now, you can just ask me about for loops, and I'm going to try and answer your questions. So taking question and answers like 3 times today already. All right, it's not ending. We'll end the class soon, Segal. So does anyone have questions on loops, for loops, or how loops work? I guess most of us are already comfortable with this. Okay, cool. I can't see any hands up, so I guess everyone is comfortable with loops, right? Okay, I am going to create a little, I won't call it assignments. I'm just going to kind of just like bring up quiz-like or a little stuff to just help you practicalize what we've learned, right? I won't call it maybe a project or assignment where you build something yet. So I'm just going to create for each topic we've talked about. I'll maybe go to variables and pick, okay, declare this variable, output this variable, do this. I'm just going to create instructions on how to do that, right? So I'm going to create it and I'm going to send it to the group by morning. So everyone should just play around with it. I already sent the cheat sheet out earlier. So if you have access to that, just go through it. But for this week's assignment, I won't call it assignment, right? It'll just be like a quiz-like or a practice-like stuff. I'm going to give you what to do, where to get help from, on how to just go around it, okay? So again, no one has any questions, right? Yeah, okay. So I think I've covered everything on my document today. So maybe when next will come, we're going to look at maybe first, I think our tutorial session tomorrow, we're going to look at everything we've learned this week. Then we'll continue from where we stop from Monday. So that should be all from me. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, guys. Do have a wonderful evening ahead.
Thanks, Sammy.
Thank you, Sammy.
Thank you so much, Sammy.
Thank you, Sammy.
Thanks. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Sammy. Good night.
Yeah, good night.